Let's go live to Melbourne now. Sky News contributor Stephen Conroy, former Labor Minister, Communications Minister. Good to see you, Stephen Conroy. And that is a little bit of a hint that I want to talk to you about press freedom. Now, this is a hot topic here in Australia, but also in the UK at the moment. Now, do you think politicians are doing enough? And I'm talking about both sides here, both the Coalition and Labor, to protect press freedom in Australia.
I think the problem we've got is that politicians use national security as a big cover-all blanket, when often the material that is leaked is just embarrassing for the government but doesn't have any significant national security implications. I mean, the fact that somebody has mentioned that Donald Trump is an idiot is hardly a national secret. Clearly there was an agenda behind who leaked the documents, and it may be that the British government wants to get to the bottom of who leaked it, but it is not a national secret or a national security. It's embarrassing for the government. With some of the leaks, my own office was raided, as you will remember, during an election campaign in 2016 because allegedly I was in possession of national security documents, which was just embarrassing information exposing the lies that the National Broadband Network company were telling. So the government has a lot to answer for in how it tries to classify documents. There are some documents, and there's probably one area where I would slightly disagree with some of the debate that's taken place at the moment. The actual story about, public servants considering putting up a plan, I think that is absolutely in the public interest. And if the document comes forward, which shows that this is under consideration, that should be exposed. The attachments which came with that document, which tried to demonstrate, I understand, why there was a need for these changes. Those attachments contained a bit of a roadmap. Not all of them were published, but some aspects which were a roadmap about how we defend ourselves and defend our infrastructure. I think there is an argument, you could say, that some of that sensitive information about how Australia defends itself goes to actual national security. But that was a supplementary attachment rather than the substance, which was a couple of public servants combined with a couple of ministers potentially trying to massively use national security to creep. Now, this may or may not be a good thing. Defending our infrastructure is going to become tougher and tougher. But I think that the problem here is that politicians, as soon as they're embarrassed, cry national security. And I think the real failing is there.
Stephen, Peter Dutton said last week that, yeah, he's for press freedom, but he also said that no one is above the law. So he's sort of got a foot in both camps. Is that an idea of it kind of being a grey area, or where that line is of the public's right to know? Does anyone really know what that line is at the moment?
Well, I think that's where judgments have to come into play. And that's why you've got to have a system that involves warrants and independent scrutiny and independent testing before these sorts of raids can go on. So, as I said, Annika Smethurst producing a document which embarrasses public servants and politicians about a scope creep, a significant increase in power that they're trying to bowl on up. That is a great story and deserves to be published.
Yeah, but Labor voted for these laws, Stephen Conroy. These have been bipartisan for so long. Do you have any regrets?
Not at all. I think where we've got a problem is that the politicians are misusing the definitions to hide their embarrassments. If, as I understand, that some parts of the attachments went to how Australia defends itself from cyber attacks, then I think that judgment needs to be shown rather than titillation and expose. Judgment needs to be shown. There is a potential national security issue there. But that's not the main substance of what this fight's been about. This is an embarrassing story, just like the raids on my office and a range of raids on the ABC. I mean, the ABC raids revolve around an issue which has now gone on for nearly, 5 or 6 years, and not one word of it has been breathed publicly. And there's some very, very serious allegations.
I mean, but it's also been revealed that metadata laws have allowed police to access, I think, journalists' data 50 times. I mean, and I don't even know whether these journalists know about it.
Well, clearly the whole point of a covert investigation is not to tip people off.
Yeah, sure.
I think journalists now know that many forms of their communications aren't as secure as they perhaps thought. I know a journalist who actually moved to the US, an Australian journalist who moved to the US, so he had a US number to avoid scrutiny and investigation from the Turnbull government. I mean, he actually used to contact me from the US because he was trying to avoid the sort of metadata implications that were coming into play. So journalists know this. That's why cabinet ministers use WhatsApp groups. Not that they're particularly secure. Everyone's using
Well, they can't be FOI either.
Correct. Well, I mean, this is a serious breakdown in the system of government because politicians are meant to and are instructed to not communicate on government matters using these encrypted apps, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Signal, whether it's Confide. There is a plethora of them.
All right.
He's across the apps,
there he sure is. Yeah, that's all the time we've got, unfortunately, Stephen. So thank you very much for your time this morning. We'll chat to you soon.